Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to today's night ending or early morning bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below the merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share this video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload, shall we? Today's first New Jersey Dogman subscriber encounter. At the time of my encounter, I had just purchased a home in Philsburg, New Jersey, May 5th, 2017, off of exit 3 on Route 78, 5 minutes from Pennsylvania. My job at the time was 90 minutes away in Hackensack, New Jersey. I worked for Home Depot at the time, 5 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon. One day, early in the morning, November of 2017, I was making my way to work, left my house at around 3:15 in the morning, making my way to Route 78, eastbound, which is about 5 minutes from my house. Once on 78, I was in the fast lane, traveling 70 to 75 miles an hour at the time. I was driving a 2010 Chrysler Sebring. So I was about 50 feet behind a pickup truck who suddenly came to a stop. So I slammed on my brakes, swerving into the middle lane just as I clipped this dog on the right side of my bumper. Never lost stride. It looked like a dark brown German Shepherd, 4 feet tall on all fours. I rolled my window down to see if it was okay. Then it turned around and stepped onto the pavement. The pickup truck already peeled out, so when it started to approach me, I took off. Next week, I got rid of the car and bought an SUV. A month and a half later, strange things started happening around my house, tapping on my kitchen window, light scratches on the siding. It's been going on every couple of days for about 2 weeks. Then one night, I was up late at around 11 p.m. doing dishes. I had the feeling that I was being watched when I looked out the window and saw 2 amber-colored eyes leveled with me, looking at me standing outside of my window. I was so scared my legs gave out on me I couldn't even scream, let alone move. I did not own a gun at the time, so I started leaving my house with a 24-inch sword with jagged edges for sawing things. One day I was running late for work and it was raining heavily that morning. I didn't leave my house until about 3:45, and I had left my sword inside. I was rushing to my car as I felt this primal fear come over me, so I turned around. The same dog that I had hit a few months back was standing 20 yards from me. I was a few feet from my car, my sword in the house. I knew I wouldn't make it. I'm paralyzed with fear as it slowly approaches me and stops about 10 feet from me. As if I already wasn't terrified, it did something that would push my fear to the limits. It stood up on 2 legs, 8 feet tall, as I felt like a 5-year-old looking up at an adult. I'm a retired bodybuilder, and its muscles and definition would make Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime look like the Nutty Professor. I was terrified and astonished at the same time, me being a retired bodybuilder and witnessing a perfect physique. I estimated its weight to be 600 to 650 pounds. He looked at me like, "Don't think I forgot what you did. I'm here for payback." Then he emitted a light growl that rumbled my chest. Then he showed me his razor-sharp teeth, and I soiled myself. Then it got about 5 feet and growled. I dropped to my knees and was hoping my death was quick. I looked to my left where the street was. I saw Patrick's vehicle making his rounds 150 feet away. Yes, I'm saved. And we never stopped. I'm crying now, and it's enjoying every moment of it. I was at its mercy, and it knew it. Patrick in the patrol vehicle made its way back and hit the Dogman with its spotlight. It looked over at the police and me. It gave me the impression I made my point, jumped on my roof and went through my back and took off in the direction of the woods, which is about a quarter of a mile. And one thing I forgot to mention, there are houses everywhere. The cop exited his vehicle with his gun drawn. "Are you okay?" "What was that? Do you need medical assistance?" "No, I don't know what that was." A month after I purchased my house, I installed surveillance cameras around my house. I didn't remember until a couple days after my encounter. The whole encounter was recorded. However, agents of the government knew that and seized my DVR, but not until I backed up a copy of a flash drive. It's been 2 years since this encounter. I feel like I am still under surveillance. If you have any further questions, I will do my best to answer. Well, I did ask questions. Number 1. When you said you felt like you were under surveillance, by who, the government or Dogman? And number 2, how did the police officer act? The police officer ended up calling medical services for me. I was in a trance-like state. It took me 15 to 20 minutes to come out of. So he came to the hospital to question me after I regained my senses. He said when he first drove by, he saw 2 people in his peripheral. He also got further away. He planned his images in his head when he realized the size difference was not normal. That's why he turned around and headed back towards me. As he approached, he thought he was looking at a Sasquatch until he saw a tail and a muzzle. He said he did not have enough firepower with him to engage it. He was relieved that it decided to leave. His description of it, Hulk with a wolf's head. He reported what he saw to his superior, and a couple of days later, plainclothes agents showed up at my house, questioned me profusely, and demanded access to my DVR, and said what I saw was a bear that wandered into town, and it would be in my best interest not to tell anyone. I would see blacked out SUVs at the corner of my street for about a month, and every now and then they would drive by. What they don't realize is 4 hours prior to them showing back up, I backed up that footage. I saw my DVR to a USB drive. The government is well aware of these creatures, and they are tracking them because a few nights after the incident, a black helicopter flying over the woods for 2 days. Second email, same subscriber. "Hey Jeff, it's Jay. I gave you my encounter a few months ago from New Jersey. I had a strange run-in with government officials, and things happened like IRS debt and so on. They told me if I handed over what evidence I had, I would have my life back, which I did. These people can ruin your life with a click of a button. Jeff, they don't care about witnesses telling their stories because we are all monitored. They care about what can be proven. I actually had a run-in with the officer that was there that night, and we met up to discuss what happened that night and what he found out, how each police department or entity keeps a black book on cryptids that the higher-ups deal with. Also, ever since my encounter, I have bought a few guns. I own a Roddy as well. I also had another encounter in the daytime a month back while I was walking my Roddy. If you're interested, It wasn't the same one back then, as it was captured not too long after my first encounter. I believe it may have been. I'd like to mention that the first and second email from this subscriber were 6 to 7 months before Victor even came on the channel. This is that subscriber's third email. Hey, good evening, Jeff. I want to start by saying the information Victor gave you was spot on. I know it's hard to believe about such creatures, Dogman types and stuff like that, but I have found more info, and I got it from a reliable source. First off, these things have not been around for 70 years. They've been around for as long as man. The ones your source put out was the time they were genetically engineered in the 50s, which they needed DNA from the original upright walking canine, or as the world knows them, Dogman. These creatures have been around since the Egyptian era, even documented in the Bible as such. The original Dogman had intellect and far exceeded our own till today. We still can't recreate pyramids. Anyway, if you are interested in this information, I will give it to you another time. Back to the encounter at hand. After my life was put in disarray, the powers that be gave me a final opportunity to get my life back, which I took under certain conditions. So, a few months after the whole ordeal with trying to piece my life back together, I purchased a few handguns and a 12 gauge. Also purchased a Roddy pup for my brother-in-law, 4 months at the time. She is now 9 months. I take her for a walk occasionally at the nature park. Me being from Jersey, the gun laws are very strict, which forbids you to open or conceal carry. To my fellow Americans, if you believe in the Second Amendment, do not, I repeat, do not move to New Jersey. You will regret it. Anyway, back to the story. I would walk my dog and keep protection in my car. So the last time, me and Kia, my Rottweiler, went to the nature park was around a month ago. Turned out it was a beautiful day around 5 p.m. And as we were heading back to the car about a quarter of a mile back, something felt off. Kia started to be on guard, her head darting back and forth as I realized that there was a possibility that we were being hunted by something. So I'm trying to stay calm to get us back to the car. As I did that, whatever was following us was no longer trying to be discreet. Kia started growling ferociously, and then the thing that was following us stepped out of the brush. Oh my God, it's the same one from the last time. No, wait, this one's a couple feet shorter. I'm 6'1", and it had me by 3 inches max. It looked like a juvenile. It was a good 25 to 30 feet away from us. Fear was overwhelming. I accepted the fact that I was going to die today, but not without a fight. It charged us. I braced for impact. It stopped short of 15 feet. It looked at me and Kia and smirked as if we weren't worth its time and leapt about 20 feet into the brush. I looked back at Kia and she was trembling. It took her a few minutes to snap out of it, and we headed back to the car. As I believe it was following us from the trees, we made it to the car without further incident and took off. A couple weeks later, I was at Walmart, and I ran into an officer that was there a few years ago, that night of my first encounter. We talked at Fridays, and I told him what happened to me a few weeks ago, and he said, I have an encounter to share with you that changed my life and job functions forever. That is something you'd like to hear. I'll provide it to you. If not, that's okay. As well, this weekend, I'm going to try to buy some more firearms because sometimes these things follow you home. Hey Jeff, I just want to start off by saying great upload the other night. I still have nightmares after years after my encounter. My first one was the worst. Then the second recently, up close and personal, still can remember the stench of its breath like decaying meat and hot ass. Pardon my language. Enough rambling, back to the encounter. So the last email I sent you, I told you I ran into the officer who was there that night of the encounter. This is what happened after that. When everything was done, he went back to the police station to give his report, and he was pondering on what he saw, what to tell his supervisor, and would he lose his job. Report stated, I was doing my nightly rounds. I passed people who seemed as if one was the aggressor. I turned my vehicle around and headed to the house. Turned my light on it. It took off before I could get a good look. It did look like a werewolf. Ended up having a psych evaluation and was convinced that it was a bear. Fast forward a little over a year, him and a handful of friends were camping at French Creek State Park in Pennsylvania. Him and two other friends were officers in another county and one firefighter. Hang out, fish, drink, do what friends do. Only going to be out there for a couple of nights. So they hiked to their camp location, pitched their tents, and fished. As it was getting later in the day, they started a fire, started talking and drinking. It was roughly 1 a.m. His friends turned in. He was still around the fire talking in the moonlight. Then he heard a roar. It sounded like the cross between a lion and a T-Rex. Two of his friends were passed out drunk. One awoke to the noise. The firefighter. What was that? Don't know. It sounds big and close. He heads to the tent and grabs his handgun. The only one out of the group to have one of them. Heavy footfalls start to approach them from the brush. Multiple angles as well. Whatever it is trying to flank us. Red and orange eye shine. They were surrounded, their friends in the tent, 20 feet from them and 10 feet from the brush. Something grabs their tent and drags it into the woods with the two in it with incredible speed. I fired 2 shots in the direction, praying to miss my friends and hit what was grabbing them. After shots fired, they came to and barreled out of the tent. What is going on? I don't know. I think we are being hunted. Hunted? By what? I don't know. I counted 8 eye shine. Do any of you have your pistols with you? No, we don't. Great. I don't have enough bullets for what's out there. Do we go to the car? No, it's too far. We'll never make it. One of the creatures would charge to draw fire. The others would attack, causing the friends to scatter, grabbing one of the friends, ripping his arm off, trying to finish him. I shot at it. First bullet missed its head. Second entered through its ear, leaving brain matter everywhere. They leave, but they are not gone. We had to stop the bleeding using a knife we used to gut fish. We stuck it in the fire, cauterized the wound. Sorry to stop it here, but the rest of what happened is a bit long, and my kids are home for 2 weeks. Should have the rest up to you by tomorrow. The next email and final email. Hey Jeff, sorry late, but here's the rest of the encounter. Also, I had to get a refresher on what happened after, so I wouldn't mix things up. So, after they were able to cauterize the wound, they were arguing if they should make a stand or hike back to their vehicles, which was a couple miles. The friend was in bad shape, and they believed he may not make it the night. So 2 friends placed the injured in a sleeping bag and hauled him to the direction of where they believed the vehicle was. The officer with the only gun would cover them. Not too long after they were moving, they heard noises in the opposite side of them, in the brush, flanking them. One would advance and then fall back into the brush strategically, as if they were trying to draw a fire, so one can go in for the kill. They hunkered down where they were and decided to try to kill another one. They might consider the risk too high and back off. After the standoff lasted around 15 minutes, he was able to get a shot off, hitting one of the dogmen in the stomach, which caused it to yelp and take off. As the others were distracted and clearly visible, he took another shot, hitting another one in the neck. That one took off. Checking to see how many bullets he had left. None now. There was nothing keeping them at bay if they decided to attack. What he believes was the alpha had red eyes, staring at him with hatred as he pointed his empty pistol to the creature, and it let out a demonic roar that brought them to temporary paralysis, and it disappeared into the darkness from which it had come. So they continued to haul their friend to the car, notified the police, got to the hospital, and tried to figure out what to tell the authorities about what had attacked them. They all agreed that it was a bear. However, government agents took over the investigation and asked who killed the bear, and the one friend said, "I did." He got separated from his friends. Further interrogations, they contacted his police department's higher-ups. The next few days, spoke with multiple officials, and was told that not many trained specialists survived that pack of upright walking canine. I'm impressed, and there's a position if you are interested, which he ended up taking. If any of the audience have any further questions about anything in this encounter, please notify me, Jeff. Today's second New Jersey Dogman subscriber encounter. Hey Jeff, I used to work as a security officer in Finns Point National Security, Pennsville, New Jersey. This encounter happened in late August of 2019. I was working night shift. My yellow Jeep Renegade was in the front of the blue garage. It was time for me to make my calls to check in with headquarters, and also time for me to drive laps around the cemetery. The first 3 laps were normal, no problems. The 4th time, I drove toward the gate. I saw huge back legs of something jogging past the right side of the gate. This caught me by surprise more than anything. This thing was huge. The back of this creature was well over 4 feet high. The fence at the lowest point is maybe 8 feet. I never saw the top half. I believe it was hunting something outside of the brick fence. I remember it having a German Shepherd color with more brown than black. I had my windows open in my car and heard it running. It sounded very heavy. I remember yelling at it out of fear, even though it was not bothering me. I was so scared that it would come back, and I panicked. I called my buddy, who only lives maybe 2 or 3 miles from the cemetery. When he didn't answer, I started praying. That calmed me down. That was my first encounter. Tonight's final Dogman subscriber, New Jersey encounter. Hey Jeff, on November 28th of 2014, my life sort of fell apart all at once. In a matter of one day, I lost my job, my business, my company car, and my place to live for reasons I won't go into detail here. Let's just say I was screwed over by my business partner, and that's that. At the time, I had just enough money to either buy a junker vehicle or put down a security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment. I'm a rather resourceful guy and opted for the vehicle. I figured a car was a better move as I could live in it for as long as it took to get my stuff together, and it would give me more options for finding a job. I had lost everything, but I had 2 things, a full set of camping gear and a girlfriend who still loved me. So I figured I could rough it outside in the cold winter nights until I found a new car and a job. At the time, I had been living in a town that was located on the edge of the Pine Barren wilderness of southern New Jersey. For those of you who have never heard it, the Pine Barrens is a rather unique 1 million acre forest of mostly pine trees and lots of deer, turkey, coyote, and some unique prehistoric type plants that only grow in that area. My girlfriend at the time lived with her parents, and despite the fact that they barely knew me, she had convinced them to take me in. But I was uncomfortable with that idea and refused the offer. As you can imagine, my girlfriend was besides herself, which worry, but she knew I was too proud to accept my crazy decision to live outdoors in the wilderness. I chose a spot on the edge of the neighborhood that I had previously lived in near a dirt storage clearing that was being used to dump and store dirt to build new development houses. I found a large path into the woods and made a stealth camp only about a quarter-mile deep into the Pine Barrens. I would sleep in the woods at night, and in the morning I would take the short walk into civilization where a woman would pick me up. Once she came to get me, I would use her car and drive to work, and then spent the day looking for a vehicle and a new job. I would also take an hour or so to head to the gym, work out, get a shower. Around 5 p.m., she'd pick me back up from work, and she dropped me back off at the campsite. Wednesday, December 3rd, was my 5th final night in this particular patch of woods. By then, I had found a job, and I was to start a few weeks. I had purchased an old SUV. It was still at the used car lot. My new car insurance would not be active for the following day. My new job didn't start for a month, but I already paid for a real campsite far away in another area of the Pine Barrens that I could live in until then. This way, I could have big fires, ride my mountain bike through the trails, and not have to sneak in and out each morning and evening. So December 3rd, 2014 was my last night at my stealth camp on the edge of town. To this day, I enjoy winter camping, and even then I had done so many times in my life, so I had a routine set up. I'd camp in cold weather. I always encapsulated my tent with a large heavy-duty camo tarp. This keeps the weather out very efficiently. It also helps to trap a little heat for comfort, but unfortunately makes it so that you cannot see outside without lifting the tarp up at your tent's entrance to look around. At about 8 p.m. or so, I had finished eating and was relaxing, just puffing on my vape and feeling happy that I would be in much more comfortable situation the next day. Just like any other night at this location at this time of night, a pack of coyotes was right outside of my tent raising heck. Each night at around 8 p.m., they would gather right outside in the front of my tent and fight, yelp, and run around. The first 2 nights I was sort of shocked, but by this time I was used to them and was sure they didn't have the balls to dare attack a full-grown human. But I still slept with a 26-inch, very sharp, full-tang short sword at my side each night just in case. I was laying on my back in the tent and started to doze off to the sound of the coyote pack when they all started yipping and suddenly ran off into the deep woods together. During the previous nights, they would just slowly leave the area as a group, continuing to scrap and circle the general area. So this sudden departure sort of piqued my interest, and I opened my eyes to listen. It was dead silent. After a minute or so, I started getting ready to doze off again when a powerful and unpleasant stench filled my tent. I can't begin to explain how overwhelmingly terrible this stench was. I sat up in my tent and stuck my face inside my jacket to escape it. It was no use. There was no escaping the smell. It was a combination of extremely bad BO mixed with dirty feet, skunk, and crap. I was too overwhelmed by the odor to even ponder what was making it. It was strong enough to make me feel sick. I remember at one point trying to avoid the smell by breathing through my mouth. The odor was so strong that I could taste it on the tip of my tongue. I was at the point of holding my breath, and whatever it was that was stinking up my campsite needed to go away. So I decided to go outside of my tent and run whatever it was off. I unsheathed my sword and started to unzip the tent entrance when I heard someone or something walk down the path of the woods that was located behind my camp. I say someone instead of something really because it was clearly a person walking on 2 feet. It was bipedal. I slowly zipped the tent back up and went silent. The path was pretty well traveled during the day by locals walking their dogs and by neighborhood kids, but this was the first time at night I had heard anyone using it. Whoever it was big and heavy because I could actually hear the thud of their feet impact the dirt path with each step. I had made my stealth camp pretty close to the path for ease to use, but my camouflage was so well. It was also behind a dirt mound with brush and the camo tarp that one could walk within 100 yards of it and not see it. The footsteps stopped, and then I heard the unmistakable sound of whoever it was leave the dirt path and slowly walk into the woods behind me to the left. My heart sank and adrenaline filled my bloodstream. I had made it for 4 nights undetected, and on my last night I was going to get found. I'm sure I was in some kind of private property, and with all the bullcrap going on in my life at the time, The last thing I needed was to get arrested by the cops and for them to break my camp up. Like I said, my camp was well hidden, and it showed no signs of anyone being there while I was gone, so I was wondering why this person was heading toward me. This whole time the stench was just as strong as ever, but had taken backstage in my mind to the current new situation at hand. I could hear whoever it was carefully and slowly walking closer and closer, until they were maybe 20 feet off to my left. It sounded like the footsteps of someone trying to sneak up on something or someone else. They stopped at my left side for a moment, and then started to walk at a normal, noisy pace through the leaves until they were about 15 to 20 yards from my tent in the area where the coyotes would congregate each night. Then it stopped. I could hear deep, hoarse breathing, like a giant monster catching its breath. I was paralyzed with fear. My heart was pounding out of my chest. Then it walked right up to the front of my tent. I clutched my blade and held my breath. Next, whatever it was, walked very slowly around the right side of my tent, still breathing deep and heavy. Then it leaned itself right into the wall of my tent and started to sniff very loudly. It took a long, deep sniffing noise through its nose and would exhale through its mouth. I was terrified, as its face was just feet away from me. At this point, I'm growing confused. The only logical thing I could think of was a bear was right outside of my tent. But the thing is, bears are almost non-existent in the Pine Barrens, especially so close to a busy construction site. But I thought to myself, what else could it be? Also, hibernation should have been happening. Nothing was making sense. I was sure that I heard a person on 2 feet walking this whole time, but no humans, no matter how dirty or homeless, could smell so powerfully dirty and nasty. Plus, the breathing I was hearing sounded more like a giant monster than a human. But monsters aren't real, right? So I rationalized that it had to be a bear. At this point, I had to do something. I figured I would say something aloud. If it was a giant smelly person, I could probably get a response. And if it indeed was a bear, there was 99.99% chance it would just run for its life once it realized there was a human in the tent. One thing I knew was black bears are terrified of humans. So I took a deep breath and said loudly, "Who's out there?" And then I whacked the side of my tent. It was standing with a hard and quick whack. The thing took 2 steps back, and to my absolute horror, let the most deepest, terrifying growl I'd ever heard. At this point, my heart stopped. I almost crapped myself. It was a long, very deep growl, just like a dog's would sound. But that dog had to weigh 800 pounds. I sat there with my blade poised in shock and terrified and waited for whatever it was to rip through my tarp and kill me. After what was probably 5 to 10 seconds, a second growl. It went silent, and all I could hear was the deafening noise of my pulsing heart in my brain. Then suddenly, to my surprise, it walked away into the forest. I could hear the unmistakable sound of the creature on 2 legs crushing dried leaves and twigs underfoot. I stayed perfectly still, holding my breath until I couldn't hear it anymore. Then I took a deep breath and almost collapsed in relief. The horrible stench began to get less and less until it finally went away. I was feeling relieved and my heart was starting to calm down a bit. Suddenly, I heard the sound of what could only be a large branch snapping quickly from a tree, or snapped in half, followed by it being smashed into a tree or another piece of wood. Right after that, it made a noise that sounded like a very single loud dog bark. My heart jumped to full turbo mode once again, and I broke out in a cold sweat. After that, I heard nothing else, and a good 20 minutes I calmed down. When my adrenaline finished, I was overwhelmed and exhausted. I reasoned if it wanted to do me harm, it would have done so. Interestingly, I had one of the best nights of sleep I had ever had, and in the morning I packed everything up and got out of there. When my girlfriend picked me up that morning, she took one look at me and asked, why I looked so disturbed. I told her what had happened, and she said it must have been one of those coyotes that I was being so dramatic over. To this day, the only person who believes me is my brother and my 13-year-old son. I had always told myself it was a bear. I couldn't come up with any other logical conclusion, but like I said, black bears are non-existent almost in the Pine Barrens. Also, since I've done my research, I have learned that bears do not have strong odor, even during mating season or while hibernating. The thought of being a Sasquatch never crossed my mind at the time because though they only existed in northwestern United States and Canada, that is, if they existed at all. Beside that, would it be the mythical creature of the Jersey Devil? Who knows? My brother, on the other hand, says that because of my proximity to civilization at the time, he thinks it was a Dogman. I suppose I will never know. My life is now perfect, and it's hard to believe that just over 5 years ago I was homeless in the woods in New Jersey. I still like to go winter camping alone almost every year, but now that I know monsters are real, I don't go out into the wilderness unless I have my big bore revolver, a 30-06, or a 12 gauge with slugs. And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this early morning, middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, our family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.